There are so many facets to that. Fuel, again, just being one of them, but loading up trucks, guys meeting, the cohesion of team, little parts and fittings. Like you said, just a guy running to Home Depot to grab a pipe fitting or something silly that we don't have in inventory. And again, just all these things compound. You know the deal. It's just crushing. What we have realized for a while is knowing that even an increase of overhead of the shop itself will decrease the lost things that slip through the cracks. And it's just like, now at least we know that is in one place of the indirect overhead in this case of a shop, not making those parts runs, fuel stops, all that stuff. Like our guys are, and we got a good team, we're a small company, 4 full-time guys. No one's to stop at the gas station. We have portable restrooms on site. There's zero reason to be at a gas station anymore for the company. There's the rare exception for certain cases, of course. But in general, like, trucks do not go to gas stations anymore. Yes. That is just, there's no need to be there anymore. Yeah. And that right there, just one killer of a whole facet of things.
Alrighty guys, welcome back to the Cost of Doing Business podcast. I am Weston Zimmerman, and today I got the honor of convincing Caleb Auman to sit down for a couple minutes here live from the HNA show, or the Equip Expo. And thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely, man. It doesn't take any convincing, really. You're a good guy with good products, so so I don't mind stopping in and chatting, man. So,
right on.
And I think you're trying to do the right thing, getting people to pay attention to their numbers and their business, and and I know firsthand what not knowing your numbers in your business will do to you. So so I'm happy to be on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's an honor, and I know most folks already know who you are, but for just a quick intro,
Sure.
Kid Contractor Podcast, tell us who you are, where you're from.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. I don't know about most folks, but we are known about us, but we run a landscape contracting business, design build, with the emphasis on hardscape construction, a lot of drainage, stuff like that. No lawn care, anything like that. We're Auman Landscape. We also have a thing called the Kid Contractor Podcast. We have a hardscape training school as well, called the Hardscape Academy.
Yeah.
And then just social media stuff and
you're doing some events this winter, no?
Yeah, we have in-person training starting this group in-person training. We do private one-on-one stuff too, but we're doing group training starting in December at our new facility that we just built. And so that's been like a big push for this year, and we're moving ahead with that, rocking and rolling. So it's cool. We're excited.
Speaking of the whole shop project you're doing, I still remember, I don't remember what revenue we were at the time. When I say we, I mean at Tussie Landscaping. It was maybe $1.5 million when Tussie built their shop. Yeah. And it was just a game changer.
Yeah.
What's the thing you're most excited about for the shop and the property and everything you're investing into that thing?
So, because we came from like a 15-foot by 40-foot bay rental unit, just a storage locker or whatever you want to call it, with outdoor storage stuff. And so we'd roll our 3 or 4 trucks, depending on the day, out of there with all the stuff. We didn't have fuel on site. We didn't have bulk material to really account to anything. And so having moved over to our new facility now, we've got that stuff on site with a dedicated shop loader. And so being able to load stuff out daily with whatever, we're not a trucking company, so we're not hauling 20 tons of material out at a time, but three tons of bedding material or whatever. Like, the guys can load down a truck or a dump trailer, get it out the door. We got fuel on site now. So that's been huge for our company as far as like, we're not sending guys to supply yards to pick up little stuff. A fuel on site's a huge deal. There's just been a lot of things that have just been game changing is a really overused phrase, but for a reason, like, it really is just another level of business. And man, it's been wonderful. And that rollout, and then as soon as the offices are finished, everybody's going to be in under one roof, and so like communication in a company is going to be even better. Like, that part is the next like game changing thing of like where we'll be there, Britt will be there, my wife who owns the company. So that's going to be like just a huge thing for moving forward for us.
Yeah. And on the business journey, like, to get successful and actually be profitable and thrive instead of just surviving, I think, like, obviously knowing your numbers, like making sure you're charging the right price is critical. But then when I think back over my experience with Tussie, like between $1 million and I'm going to say $2.5 million, like the focus was on getting those numbers right.
Right.
And once we kind of had that into a system and a process where it was like we're just continuously putting those things into practice, to me, what was the next level, the next thing is everything you were talking about, like figuring out how to be efficient and maximizing your team's time on site.
Right.
And minimizing your team's time running for stuff at suppliers or getting fuel. I mean, just a 10-minute stop at a fuel station with 4 guys in the truck is let's just say a 1 man hour,
right.
which is what, $100 or
right.
you name it.
Yeah.
And you add that up over hundreds of times of a year, and it makes a huge difference. And I think like the opportunity to increase your net profit lies as much in the efficiency aspect as it is in the numbers aspect.
Absolutely. I mean, and the fuel thing is just one example of a multi-tentacled monster that is a company of places where a little bit of profit just slips out. And I mean, there are so many facets to that. Fuel, again, just being one of them, but loading up trucks, guys meeting, the cohesion of team, little parts and fittings. Like you said, just a guy running to Home Depot to grab a pipe fitting or something silly that we don't have in inventory. And again, just all these things compound. You know the deal. It's just crushing. And what we have realized for a while is knowing that even an increase of overhead of the shop itself will decrease the lost things that slip through the cracks. And it's just like, now at least we know that is in one place of the direct overhead, indirect overhead in this case of a shop. Not making those parts runs, fuel stops, all that stuff. Like our guys are, and we got a good team. We're a small company, 4 full-time guys. No one's to stop at the gas station. We have portable restrooms on site. There's zero reason to be at a gas station anymore for the company. There's the rare exception for certain cases, of course, but in general, like trucks do not go to gas stations anymore. That is just, there's no need to be there anymore. And that right there, just one killer of a whole facet of things. So
I can think of like over the span of about 3 years when Tussie was putting this into practice, like we went from being at our local supply center 3 to 5 times a week to I went an entire season and never went once.
Yeah, even in my truck, because I drive a company truck, and like myself, again for the fuel station thing, I don't go to the gas station anymore. It's kind of weird, even like we take a personal vehicle and go to the gas station. It's just strange being there now. I feel like am I supposed to be here? It's weird, but I mean you're exactly right. Just all those little things. I'm so happy to be in that place. I can't wait. We got a lot more to do yet, a lot further to go, but. It is something I would encourage folks to consider, like as soon as you can get into a place, if you're running a company, and I don't know what dollar of revenue is right for you on that, but as soon as you can get, or as you can, as if you're renting, be upgrading your facilities, however that is and whatever that looks like, with those little things that are going to make your profit, you squeeze that profit out of, say you're stuck in market pricing for whatever reason, which I don't advocate, but refining, and even if you're running to the number the way you should, there's always places to squeeze profit out of inefficiency and unproductive activities.
I think that thing of running for stuff, not having things on site is the lemon least squeezed in this industry. Right? And
go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, like, to your point on like, I don't know where you're at, and like building would make this happen for your business, like, in your mind, when would you say is the ideal time to stereotypically, like, hey, you should consider building out a shop, or at least having a property to build this center from which you operate?
That's a good question, and I don't know if there's any one right answer, but I would say if you're approaching the $500,000 mark, it's really time to be figuring out, A, what your long-term goals are. Do you want to get to $1 million in revenue? Do you want to get to whatever? And there's no number. It doesn't matter. Like if you're happy at 120 in revenue and you're an owner-operator, or 10 million, it doesn't matter. But I would say for most intents and purposes, if you're, and probably maybe the better metric of that, and this is just me thinking through this out loud, maybe the better metric of that is team members. And so those losses of productivity compound with every team member you add 100%. In the field. So if you're spending time, it's one thing to be wasting your own time loading a truck and trailer every morning to go mow or to go do small installs or something. But if you've got 2 or 3 guys you're taking the time to take machines and tools out of a shop build or a rental unit or whatever, put them on a truck, you take that time frame to where you should be, with trucks that are outfitted where you're not loading, unloading every day, right? That's another time killer. We figured that out kind of early. I say early, but that was one thing I ran the numbers one time where we would unload trucks every day and put stuff back in the building. And it's like, dude, we spend 10 minutes a day with 2 guys, morning and evening, doing unloading, loading trucks. And it's like, I ran the numbers on that one time. I was like, man, that's $700. Like, that's a chunk of rent that we can move into a nice place,
Yeah.
nicer place that we don't have to be unloading trucks.
Out of a 10-minute thing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And Weston, it adds up. And again, that was just another
One
facet
example.
of this multi-tentacled monster of lost productivity and efficiency. And there is waste in companies, even super organized companies are still always trying to squeeze that waste out.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do to be a viable competitive business, because it just translates to more money to the bottom line, or more money you can reinvest in the company. And you have to be, I would say, fanatical about always looking to achieve and get more efficient in your company, because it just, economics command that,
Yeah.
and it will allow you to make more money, and that's what we're all supposed to be here doing, at least. And I've done my
100%.
share of not making money too, believe me, I've been there. So,
Having a business that owns you instead of the other way
yeah,
around.
I've been on both ends of that stick, and I tell you, that short end where the business is chasing you instead of you chasing it, I mean, that's a bad place to be, and I've been there, and I really want to encourage people you can get out of that, but it takes dedication, and you got to try to pull yourself away from the field some to
Yeah.
work on the business, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like the natural progression is figure out the numbers, right?
Of course.
Get your overhead recovery, and then as soon as you're kind of like, okay, I got that in line, then start working on the efficiency. That's the next profit center, that the easiest, lowest hanging fruit to increasing your profit.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to talk about the lemon, because sometimes trying to squeeze this profit out can be a bitter thing sometimes, because trying to get your staff and trying to communicate to your staff why we're trying to not stand around for 20 minutes in the morning drinking coffee and smoking and talking, and we need to be getting out in the field. Well, the reason we got to do that, guys, is not because we're greedy and money hungry and stuff. It's like, the more profitable the company is, the better wages we can pay, the nicer trucks we can put you in, the nicer equipment we can buy that's going to allow you to not have to work so freaking hard and pick up 80-pound blocks manually.
Yep.
We buy nicer vacuum equipment, all sorts of stuff. So that profit is beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, it is.
And the right company owners with the right communication tactics work on conveying that to your team of why we're trying to be more profitable. It's not just so I can go to Bali, in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It's so that we can build a better company for everyone to work at. And
Yeah,
be
it's
part
like,
of.
I remember when I was just starting to be a crew leader at Tussy, and I wanted to make more money. I'd just been married and all that, and I was frustrated with, I wanted to be able to do more and make more. And some of the best advice I ever got was Greg Wistock. I was having this conversation with Greg Wistock at Aquascape. He was like, stop whining and go home and ask the owner, what can you do to make yourself more valuable to the company?
Right.
Because like this whole thing of like, well, why do I have to, what do you mean, why can't I just stand around and talk for a while in the morning, every morning? It's not, and like you said, it's not so that the owner can go to Bali or whatever, but it's more of like, if we can make the company successful, then that is the mechanism by which we make you more successful.
Right.
And that takes leadership to convey that in a way that the team can buy into, and it's the stereotype is that the team, the employees typically by default will think that the owners are making way more money than they actually are.
Right.
And so having that leadership and that genuine vibe of, if we can make this company more efficient and more successful and more profitable, I think it's the duty, maybe that's self-imposed, the duty of the owner or the leader to pass that on to the guy and tie that reward to the team.
Right.
Yeah,
that's a great point too of we the profit motive, because nobody's going to work like the owner does.
That's right.
Ever. And so we've got to make it enticing enough for the guys to want to work at well. So we've been working on production bonuses for hitting man hours, exceeding man hours. And that stuff's tough because you got to track it and you got to pay attention if you're on track with the job and all that stuff. And so that's a whole nother layer of bureaucracy or whatever you want to call it, or administration, that you've got to track this stuff and make sure that people are being compensated fairly.
Yeah.
And you've got a way to say, we were on hours and it's on paper and everybody can see yes or no. It's like, well, I thought we hit hours in that job. It's like, well, no, we didn't. Well, prove it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, so you got to have that stuff in place. Of course, your software is a great place to start with that and do all that. But you got to be able to prove it and make it the owner's got to be accountable too.
Exactly. Right? It can't be this ambiguous thing. Right. It should be as simple as possible. If you want to write it out, make it a one-pager, simple.
Right.
And because I believe humans kind of innately just want to know we all just want to know when we're winning and when we're losing.
Right.
And when we're winning, we want to know it so we can celebrate. We want to get that, that
Right.
reward. And when
Yeah.
we're losing, at least the people that want to succeed are like, well, how do I not do that again?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
And that's the kind of staff you want, and
Yeah.
you want to keep grooming and building and growing into your company, right?
Yeah.
And the folks that aren't so much on that team or on board, we find a place for them that works, and in this labor market, this is tough to say, because it's easy to say, it's harder to do if, maybe we're not a good fit and we're not all on the same page
Yeah.
here. And so that you can go bass fishing every weekend, we've got to be, for our 40 hours of work, we've got to be on point so that we can have good weekends off with your families and all that stuff. So you try to tie it in. Like, I know I don't expect you to be lockstep with my vision of what I want to do with the company and stuff, but I need you to be on board at least. And if you are on board, it allows us all to go forward together, and you can have your evenings and weekends to do what's more important to you, which is your own personal life.
Yeah.
But while we're at work, we got to be at work.
Yeah.
And it's all communication with your people.
Have you ever read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko?
I have heard enough of his stuff on podcasts and other podcasts to say
You
I've
kinda
read
know-
it.
you
Essentially,
kinda
I
know
feel
the-
like it,
yeah.
but I'm all about it. I'm really big on extreme. Like, it is your fault.
Yeah.
Period. As wherever you're at in the hierarchy, it's your fault. And actually in individual life too.
Yeah.
Take ownership of things and do what you can to make it right or make it better. And
Yeah.
I'm all about it.
This whole conversation around leadership and connecting to the guys and all that, building a vision and building a system to know when you're winning and when you're losing, like that's all, it makes me think of that. Like that book was probably one of the top 3 that I've ever read. Like,
Yeah.
It had a real impact on just
awesome.
my mindset, you
Yeah.
know? Because like we naturally just want to blame stuff.
Sure,
For, you know,
it's easy, and again,
it's the cheap way out.
it really is, man. And when you start owning up to, like, I mean, even with our guys, like, say our guys will screw stuff up where somebody made a bad call on site, or the lack thereof even, of like making a call, and so everything got delayed because we didn't make a decision or whatever. Like, well, that was their fault. No, it's my fault, because we're not having these conversations of why it's important to act, why it's important to make, because not making a decision is to make a decision.
That's right.
And so, like, this is why we need to execute on things, and it's why we need to always be conveying this. So essentially, it still is my fault in some way or another, because I'm not communicating to them effectively, or we're not driving home the point of why it's important to do X, Y, Z. And so I see something going on we don't agree with, and we can blame it on them, but ultimately the leadership is not the ones making the correction or doing something ultimately to make that work. So yeah, I totally agree, man. The leadership has got to fall on that sword.
Yep. Yeah. I was at the Influencer Live yesterday morning, and you made a comment that was interesting, because I believe it. I agree with you, but like you were saying how you look at Motor and he's doing this tremendous project and the comparison thing on
Right.
Instagram, right? And then Motor might look at you and be like, dude, that shop is tremendous.
Right.
I wish I had that shop. Like, what would you say to this community out there? Like, it's interesting when you begin to kind of know someone online, you follow them, and then you actually meet them in person and realize, oh, you have problems too. You
Right,
know?
yeah, we're human.
So,
We're human, it turns out, yeah.
So what would you say to folks that, to remember to, I guess, maybe combat, I don't know if that's the right word, the comparison problem. What would you say to people hey, just remember, keep it real? Like, what would you say around the whole...
What I would say is just remember the people that you have met, and you're like, oh, they do deal with stuff just like I deal with stuff and problems, and just remember everybody's human, man. At the end of the day, there was one person at one point that was perfect walking the earth, and that's it. And so after that, everybody's got their own problems, and we've all got our shortcomings. Yes, some folks may run a phenomenal company, their personal life is a disaster, or maybe their ethics aren't so good, or whatever. I mean, just everybody's got their problems. I definitely have my faults, and I know in all our social stuff and our podcast, everything, I really try to make sure, because there's so many young folks out there, or people starting out that think, see it and like, well, man, hardscaping must be where the money's at. Look at the stuff they're buying and doing. It's like, no, not necessarily. I mean, there's money in anything, I suppose, right? You just got to figure out how to hone in on that. And be it lawn care, there's money in lawn care. It's tough to get there, but it's doable.
Yeah.
But you can never compare yourself to others. Now, I don't think it's a bad thing to be watching others and use that as motivation.
Yeah,
be like,
right.
man, I definitely want to get to that level of contracting, but I know they're not perfect, and I know that perfection didn't get them there.
And I think the other thing is to see through and try to identify the principle, and like make it like not the way you set up your shop might not be the perfect way for me to set up my shop.
Absolutely.
You know, identify the principle, like saving time instead of like, oh, well, I got to have my fuel tanks on the right side, not on the left.
Exactly.
You know,
yeah.
And just I think over my years at Tussy, we did that every year. We'd go to these events and we'd take home one thing, and we didn't always exactly do the way that whoever we learned it from did it, but we implemented the principle.
Right, in a way that fit your culture and your company setup. Yeah, it is absolutely the thing. Like, you got to do you, stay in your lane, but at the same time, you know, like, yeah, I mean, look, that's what's awesome about social media and horrible about it is like, you know, it's easy to get caught up in what other people are doing and compare yourself to that. And like I joke with, I've made those jokes a lot, but I look at Boulder and Swire and all these guys, you know, killing the game with, you know, tilt rotators and all this crazy tech and all this stuff.
That's the latest rage.
And Paver King with, you know, his triaxle dump trucks and stuff. I'm like, man, we suck.
That's right. That's what you mentioned on the.
Why, you know, why are we not doing that stuff? And then at the same time, I look at other things like, we don't, and not that these guys have this, but like, we don't have the labor issues that a lot of guys deal with. We've got really good staff. So there's things we're doing that are just far beyond what other companies have going on as far as we don't have the labor trouble that other people have. We got some infrastructure issues that we're not where we should be with some stuff. And so you just got to remember, like, there are things you do that are better than other people do, and there's things, you need to work on and get better at. And it's just, I don't want to say I struggle with it, but I find myself, you know, falling victim to that, or making myself a victim more so, right? Again, to be the extreme ownership end of things. Like, I'm allowing myself to feel those feelings of inadequacy because I see another company with stuff I don't have, and like, well, we must suck, and we don't have that as why. But no, we haven't set that as a priority or a goal to achieve that certain outcome. And that falls on us to make those improvements.
I think a one-liner that you kind of like, I want to just reflect back is like, you got to be comfortable with you. You got to do you. Like,
absolutely.
You don't like if you're always chasing, I don't know. If you're not comfortable in your own skin, you're not. It's going to feel empty, right?
Yeah.
And not authentic. But anyway, it's a little tangent.
No, that's great.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What in the whole journey of knowing your numbers, like this industry of contractors that's trying to figure out how to charge the right price and all of that, what would you say was maybe one thing that sticks out to you, something that was super effective for you that really made a difference? Like, it could be like, oh, understanding what overhead is, or it could be like, hey, when I figure out I can save a ton of time with templates and production rates, or like, what's something that sticks out to you as something that was super effective for you?
The number one thing for me, and just in my nature of things, was just being realistic with how long it takes to do things.
Right.
Everything would be, back in the day especially, and we still struggle with this still, like, trying to be realistic with our man-hour estimations of like how long it takes to do a task or a day's worth of work. And so for us, it was like, Caleb, just be honest with yourself, especially as I'm not in the field anymore and haven't been for a while, of like, Caleb, it's going to take 2 guys all day to do that. Just be honest with yourself. They're not going to knock that out in 5 hours, and you can move on to something else and get a 2 for 1 in one day. Just be honest with yourself. Put the 8 man hours on it, or 16. And just be honest with yourself. You deserve that extra money anyways because you're working hard and you're killing yourself to get this done. And chances are something's going to wrong. The machine's going to throw a track. The client's going to come out and talk forever.
It's going to change everything.
It's going to rain.
Yes.
You know, we got to pull off site and then go back on. So just for us, it was just being realistic with our man hours. And the more I started doing that, that amount of man hours isn't making that big a difference in the price anyways. But it was absolutely, again, game changing for us of just accepting like certain tasks. We're just going to put a full day on that thing, and the guy's got time to do it right, to do it the way we want to do it. And that's the thing, we'd always do it right, but we're doing it right at a cost or a loss. And like, so for us, it was just being realistic, man.
It's like you said, man, like, it didn't make that much of a difference on the price, but it made all the difference in your profit.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know,
that is so fun. It's such a minute thing that was absolutely make or break for a company.
Yeah.
And I mean, just even this year, let me go the last 2 years, just being realistic and not trying to squeeze so much stuff into one day of productivity. Now, if I was on site with owner brain, we're going to crush it. We're going to get it in. Your guys and your crews, if you're turning them loose and you're doing, I think kind of a hybrid thing I've done with the Jocko thing is like extreme ownership, extreme delegation. So I'm a big believer in like turning my guys loose to go after it. And they're not going to do it as fast as I would do it because they're not going to look at the production the way I look at it.
The thing we forget is like, oh, it'll take 3 days to do the patio, but what about all the logistics and the drive time and all of that behind it?
100%.
Got to figure that in. And then I also like what you said about like, don't bid yourself 5 hours. Like, it's going to bid. You got to recover the whole overhead for the whole day.
Right.
Bid in full day chunks.
Exactly. And And if you keep finding, and that's the thing too, and we've started turning down and have for a little while now, smaller jobs like that that we just can't make make sense. Like for poor old Grandma Herfenerbler, it needs 3 shrubs. Grandma, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, but we just can't. And I'm saying not my family, but I'm just using it. You know, some old lady or whatever. You really want to help her out, but you know the reality is you're not a good fit for that because your company overhead requires that you be on bigger projects that take you all day and not these little 3-hour
shrub things. If you're going to have those
things.
machines, you got to be on jobs that can pay for those machines.
And those expensive people. I mean, that's just the deal. And so like, Grandma Herfenerbler, I would love to do that 3 shrub install for you.
Is Herfenerbler a last name?
It is. I'll tell you off air where I got that name, but it's from a popular radio show. But but it was, you know, but for those 3 shrubs, I would have to charge you $1,000 for 3 shrubs to make that worth our time the way our company is structured at the point we're at now. I'm really sorry. Here's a number of 2 guys. They're on the come up. This would be a great job for them. They'd love to help you out. Here's 2 numbers. And I try to pass that on to some guys I know and help them out as their company grows.
You got to know what you got to know you. You got to know what you do and what you make your money at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, real quick, one last question. What's the best advice you've ever been given in business or in life?
Gosh. You know, the golden rule, do unto others, you know. Well, I think this is from the Dale Carnegie book, or maybe it was just hybridized from that, but it was treat other people how they want to be treated. That's you know, the golden rule still is do unto others, right? All that. But the real thing is like what you want to, you know, maybe what you think is the best thing for that person and how you would want something is not how, so try to always like, for clients or your spouse,
I don't think I've ever heard
try to make sure you're doing what they want, not necessarily what you want.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really good.
That is good.
And aside from that, I've gotten a lot of great advice that I've never acted on, so I can tell a lot of those.
Dude, just on that point is all this knowledge and hacks and tricks and things that you see in it. Knowledge is worthless without execution.
Absolutely.
Information is useless. Education is useless unless you go implement it.
Yep. It's like a machine sitting in the yard, not taking it to site. It's what is it doing there?
It's easy to sit there and nod your head and agree. It's hard to actually go do the work.
In life, period. It's easy to talk about working out. It's harder to go actually freaking work out, you know? I'm going to work out tomorrow. All right, sure. Caught myself saying that a bit. So, but when we finish the building, I am putting a gym in there, and so that's me kicking a can down the road. So why don't you start doing push-ups today? It's like, well, I'm gonna wait till I get my gym done.
Exactly.
So I struggle, right? I struggle with my own issues, people. We're real out here.
Yeah. Well, let's close it off with where can people find your? Are you sold out on your winter classes coming up?
Not sold out.
Okay,
We're filling up though, but
yeah.
the hardscapeacademy.com. For our in-person training stuff, thank you. Kid Contractor Podcast, Instagram, YouTube, Auman Landscape, all that stuff. Weston here at SynkedUP, man, thanks for having me on. And keep doing what you're doing because you're elevating the industry, and I'm happy to see it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to coming out there and building the koi pond.
You're welcome anytime, man. That'd be great. We'll look forward to it.
Okay. It's a pleasure.
Always.
Thanks, Caleb.
Yes, sir.